Welcome to the Dream Team Academy podcast, where we help you make your business dreams come true.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We have a very unusual guest tonight. I know everyone's unusual. I all say the same thing, but honestly, I only bring you really good people. So tonight, well, it's actually the middle of my day, but it could be the night for you. We've got a gentleman who's all about enjoying your business. Yes, you heard that right. It's about actually loving your life. So guess what? He's in the right podcast because, you know, we're all about living a life you love. So we're so excited to talk to Andrew Miller. His business is Business Enjoyment. That's what his business is called. So he's kind of a coach. He's a coachish because he's way more than a coach. He's a mentor. He's a leader. He's somebody who can take you to living in your business paradise. I made it up. He didn't say that. So without further ado, Andrew, welcome to the Dream Team podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Lisa. And the actual strap line, if you do want to, is I want people to enjoy their business so much it makes their bits tingle. That's the
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Okay, right. Well, we always start with the story. What on earth took you to being a business enjoyment expert? I got to get the story.
Well, it sort of comes from the reverse, as often things do. But so my corporate career, when I did follow the traditional path and did the old sort of education and get a job and that kind of thing, I'm actually an accountant by background. Hurrah! Always a good opener at parties. But the other thing that always got people sidling away from me very sharpishly was my specialism within accountancy as a specific form. I'm actually an insolvency practitioner. So when companies, when companies went bust, my job was to take control of that business and run it, and hopefully keep it alive and you know, sell it as a going concern and keep all the jobs going on, all the rest of it. But so I was working for KPMG, one of the larger accounting firms.
Well.
But we work with all sizes of businesses. So my main job was running businesses. That's essentially what I did, but in very extreme and specific circumstances. But I was based in the UK. I've been based in Australia. I've worked in Europe as well. I've run bingo halls, shopping centres, designer clothes, computer, anything and everything. You name it. I've probably run it at some point, or something like it. But as I say, it's a very specific sector, and you know, we're hands-on running it. It's not just a case of sitting in a boardroom and making decisions. You're down there negotiating with customers and trying to keep the creditors on board who are owed money, but you got to get the employees on, blah blah blah, and of course the director team. And what I realized was that it became very apparent when you're in that space, which is that when you watch a director, business owner, and you're working alongside them and they're seeing everything that they have built collapse in front of their eyes, it becomes really apparent that connection between emotion and business. And we always talk, well, we don't always, things are shifting, but business has always talked about systems and processes and marketing, and these are all absolutely right. They are a fundamental part, but that emotional element that comes through it, and the fact that we are our business as much as we try and separate it,
very much so.
It is very relevant. So I was working in that space for the best part of 17 years, and eventually got to the point where I realized I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. Nothing to do with the company, nothing to do with the job. Essentially, I was the wrong person in the wrong place, always had been. But that's what you do when you follow a career. You just next step. You don't think about it.
Yep.
So I found out, I've discovered coaching through various things, and realized that working with people which is what I wanted to do. And when I first leapt out into the world of coaching, it was actually very specifically niched, helping those people going through an insolvency or financial difficulty, help them with the emotional stress of what happens. So obviously it's stressful when it happens, and people that lose their business, it has a massive impact on their confidence and the shame and all these things that go on. Suicide is not a ridiculous consequence of insolvency. And of course, the press, the public, the credit, they just blame the director. It's all their fault, even though 90% of the time they're just decent, genuine people putting themselves last, doing their damnedest to make things work, but circumstances dictate otherwise. So that's where I was started off specifically, and then over time, as I've worked with more and more people in different stages of life and all the rest of it, you realise that actually people are doing okay. They're kind of stressed as well. I mean, you understand why people losing everything's stressed, but you're doing all right. Why are you feeling stressed? And then you meet people who are really, really successful, and they're stressed as well, and they're not happy. And hang on a sec, what excuse have you got? And that's where the bigger picture starts coming around. It's like, hang on a sec. The problem through all of this is that everybody's focused on money. People at the top just focus on money. People in the middle just, I need to earn the next thing. The person who's just lost all the money, that being the big driver. And the consequence of focusing on the one thing means we lose out on all the other stuff. And that's where the concept comes from. It's like, hang on a sec. We're not, I've always been taught as an accountant, we're taught that we're in business to make money, but we're not. We are in business to enjoy what we do. And
Hallelujah.
And whilst money's a part of it, it's not the be all and end all. It's there to facilitate the other things. And if we forget everything else, then we're going to end up in trouble.
I love it. I love it so much. It's the man after my own soul, because even I forget that. I trained horses for 40 years, and whilst I did it because I loved it, but then, like you say, you just keep walking, and then you have to pay the bills. So I trained more and more and more, and then I found myself teaching children. And whereas I taught very advanced, I started teaching lower level, and I can do it my time. I'm brilliant at it. I'm extraordinary. So people come and they teach more, teach more. I teach more kids, it pays the bills. And I woke up one day and went, what am I doing? Because I'd lost sight with what I got into it for, which is because I loved riding these incredible horses. Now I'm teaching kids to do rising trot. I'm like, this is not what I started to do. And I actually started to quit what I do. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do horses anymore. The wonderful thing is, having stopped, I'm now coming a little bit back into it again, because I've managed to reset, because my real passion is for the horses, and if I can do it my way, but that's what led me. It's like yourself. It's like, well, what's this all about? Why are we here? It is to make money, but it is to make money so that you can have a life you love. It isn't so that you can make money as an end all. It's only so much money you need anyway, but we're driven by the numbers, and the numbers are not. They're not the happiness of sitting on the sofa with someone you love. They're not taking the dog you love for a walk. These are the quality of life. It's absolutely, I love it. I love what you're doing. Anyway. I'm
sort of leaving ahead of it. We can run through it. It's fine. But you picked on a good point there, which is that we only need so much money. And again, the sort of the competition capitalistic sort of mode is more, but we only need so much. And so the sort of the nub of business enjoyment, the thing that makes your bits tingle, is that connection to purpose. Why are we doing what we do? What's the reason for being on this planet? So the money element comes in, and we need to do as much as we can to support ourselves. We need to be in a position where we are in the right space, and it's not just money, it's all the work that I know you do and everyone does in terms of looking after themselves and all the stuff that goes on in our head and our heart and all the rest of it. So we need to get ourselves in the right position. But then there becomes a point where we don't need to put any more into there, and then everything we do can then go outside of us and start helping somebody else. It's not as black and white as that. We can do it all at the same time, but there needs to be that external element of where we know we're making a difference, and it's something that connects with us, and that is the thing that where true business enjoyment comes from. Once we've got to the point where we're making that difference in the world.
So how did you just? I can see where it came from now, but how did you go from an accountant doing insolvency to creating this basically a consulting business? I mean, like you said, the easiest thing is maybe you're a coach, but kind of a coach consultant in a way. You're a consultant on how to have enjoyable business.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I've got here by running into lots of brick walls and getting up again and keep going. So I mean, I found out about coaching when I was, let's say, at KPMG. I actually started exploring coaching options within the firm, and it was there is a story behind it. Seriously, not got time to go through the full thing. But bottom line was, we're talking sort of 2008-ish, when recession is
Ooh,
hitting.
bad time.
Recruitment was dropping. So basically, there was a point where I had my dream job lined up, doors open, and then they just shut everything down. Basically slammed the door in my face, and it was like, and I got out of where I wanted to get out, and then I was straight back in, and all this sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
and anyway, so as actually, when I realized that working with people in some way, shape, or form, and that coaching was what I wanted to do, it was interesting. The first step was kind of what you alluded to, is I went as far away as possible. I wanted to dismiss myself from all the things. I thought about doing career coaching and executive coaching and all the sort of stuff, but with a conversation with somebody, don't let go of all the experience that you've got. You've got all this knowledge. So that brought me back to say, well, actually, there is this niche here. And I just literally became a what would you call it, a supplier of one. I mean, I was the only person in the country who was doing coaching within the insolvency arena, which is on the one hand really good, on the other hand bloody difficult to get your message across because nobody understood what I was trying to do.
I'm just curious. I'm absolutely curious now. So your message was like, are you on the verge of bankruptcy? Can I help? Or have you gone bankrupt? Can I help? I mean, were you trying to help?
Bit of everything. The intent, the idea was that most reasonable sized businesses, they don't just go into insolvency. There's a whole process before that, normally involving accountants and banks getting involved. And I thought my reasoning was that because I've worked in the banks, I've worked in the accountants, and you go into the director is going through fear and all the stuff that you can imagine has happened when all this is faced with you. So the walls come up, they shut off, they don't communicate properly, they keep things hidden, they don't do what they need to do, when actually if they listen to what was going on, it might save their business.
Yeah.
And so my thought was to sort of be independent to the banks and the accountants, but come in at the same time. Let me have a conversation with people, and then I can work with them, hold their hand through the process and keep them calm, and then let's look at the stuff rationally and all the rest of it. So
yeah, no, I get it. So you came in as a white knight after the thing had closed, the door closed, the banks have.
Or before, or as it's
before. Okay, so they're either that last minute they're going into it or they're coming out of it, and so you were like, okay, we can do this. So you came in almost like in a performance coach situation, in a situation that was really, really stressful.
I'm starting getting into some of the deeper personal things as well, because it's turning up all that internal stuff, and then, as I say, confidence, shame, all the fears of rejection, all the imposter syndromes, all the and suddenly you discover all these people in business that have all these traumas in their previous life, and you've got to be able to stand there and deal with it, and then find ways to manage it and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, I did a massive shift. I knew the business stuff, but now I was really getting to understand what goes on inside people's heads and
fascinating.
So sort of branch the two. And I mean, to as I say, that was the idea, but getting the message across was quite hard. The banks didn't really get it, the accountants didn't really get it, and getting straight into the people, they weren't in resident. So it's like, how do I get
it's what they needed, but it wasn't what they wanted. Absolutely. And that was your problem.
And they didn't know what they wanted.
Yeah.
So I remember I was at a networking event, and somebody was doing a marketing presentation about standard marketing things. He was a LinkedIn specialist. And in those days, LinkedIn groups existed and had an element of they do now, but they're very rubbish. But anyway, the general thing was go into a group where your ideal client is, and add value and content and build up relationships. Not changed anything now, but that was the thing that was going on. And like you alluded to earlier on, it's like, well, this is brilliant information, but there is not a LinkedIn group for people about to go bust.
No. Well, who are not if they are? They don't want to let anyone know that they're struggling. So you're in this sort of secrecy as well. Like they're struggling, they don't want to let you know they're struggling. Hey.
So I twisted it around and thought, what if there was one? What would it look like? And then follow that thought process. And I thought, well, actually, there won't be one for people about to go bust, but there might be one for people who have gone bust or did in the past, and they want to sort of shared community and the war wounds and the sharing of the tales and that kind of thing, because it's sort of what we survive together. There might be that sort of thing. That might be interesting. And then actually those people can have a lot of insights and information that's going to be useful to the people that are going through it now. Hello, that sounds interesting. I'd like to know these people. And then hang on a sec, if I speak to these people, I just get the stories from them. I can share these stories with the people. And that's what I started doing. I started going out and interviewing people that had been, starting asking for people who had been through an insult. Starting getting their stories, their journeys, what they'd been through. And then just with the idea of getting some messages, and then realized, oh, hang on a sec, I think I've got a book here.
Of all the stories.
Of all the stories. Well, I didn't want to make them too obvious because they're personal stories and
okay, so you just put the
but obviously I've got a lot of knowledge of the other side of things, so I was able to take the content and use them as flesh to put on the bone. So I created a structure of what a business and a person goes through as it goes through an insolvency, as things you go from dip to a downturn, through to the bank getting involved, through to collapse, trying to get back up again, this whole cycle, and then using the comments and the stories to illustrate the points of what you need to do at each point to look after yourself and make sure that you survive the process, because that's the critical thing. If you can come out the other end, it may not be with that business you started with, but if you're okay, you've got somewhere to go. And that was the critical process. So each stage, stepped actions that you can do. And also then I had something I could then give to people, say, look, this is what
very important. It gives you authority. We all talk about authority in the coaching consulting. Who are you? How do we prove to people we know what we're doing? So fact that you're published. Look, guys, everyone listening, just because they've got a book doesn't mean they know what they're doing, but I know you all think it does. And just because they tell you it's a bestseller, bad secret, doesn't mean it's really a bestseller. It just means they got bestseller in the title, and there's a way to tweak the algorithm. Oh, I'm telling all the secrets because I'm a bad girl, because I'm all about integrity and honesty. So you trust your experience of somebody, not just what they tell you. But a book is a good way to get authority, proven here by Andrew who's telling you. Go on, Andrew.
And it's that authority element was the fact that a banker or an accountant could then give that book to somebody and say, look, read chapter 4. It's relevant to you. And look, this is not me telling you this. There's no, this is what other people who've been where you are talking about. And so it gives that element of detachment from the person, no agenda, and
I love it. What's it called? What's the book called? I'm going to get it.
Hope Won't Pay the Wages.
Oh, I love it. Is it on Amazon?
Yes.
Okay, good. We'll put the link to that in the show notes as well, because I just love that. I just love everything you're telling me. I'm to devour it. But honestly, I have this huge library. Everyone I interview, I'm going to get that book.
Yeah, that's the trouble. I know that. No, interesting, because I've shifted on from there, but that was 2013. I think I'd published that book. It won an award in 2020.
Well done.
It took 7 years for the market to turn around. Remember what happened in 2020? We all remember that. And obviously, it was clear that what was going to happen was going to be a financial crisis and all the rest of it. And suddenly it came up to surgence again, and actually got recognised and noted, and won an award and everything. Business Game Changers magazine editor's one of top books of 2020.
And isn't that a story for persistence and perseverance and just you publish it and maybe you think, oh, I didn't make the best of the list or whatever, and then comes a time when the market comes to you. If it's good content, you never ever know. Wow. Okay, this is great. Carry on.
So that was it. However, it got where it got to. So after that book, I sort of started promoting it. I worked with some PR people to get into magazines and articles and all the usual sort of stuff to promote it. And I actually got to the point where I actually ended up speaking to government. And they asked me to be a policy advisor on business failure. And I had this plan on how we could create a support network. Because certainly when people have gone into insolvency, every single director, it's a matter of public record as them going through. We could create a support network of people from coaches, therapists, other people that have been through it, help them get back up on their feet, back into business quicker, contributing rather than being doom and gloom and drawing from the state and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. And so they were interested in that. We started talking about it. Then, of course, governments change, falls out of favour, funding moves, and that just disappeared, never happened, which I'm actually not that worried about. But I can say, oh, that's to be a government policy advisor, so that's good. Stick that on CV.
More authority.
But what it did make me realise was that what I had thought when I first started, it was just like, oh, this is a nice little niche, which is a little bit different. Like I might only need a few clients, I'll be fine. I had now got in my head a much bigger picture, a bigger thing than I had originally started off with. So my vision was now a lot bigger. But because of all the distractions, because it wasn't really that easy to get into the right kind of people, it wasn't actually working as a business.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't making enough money, basically, the bottom line. And the clients that I were getting were actually these ones that I'd alluded to earlier on, which are actually doing okay or just need to do a bit better or whatever it might be. So I shifted at that point, and I actually collaborated with another coach, and it was predominantly in just helping small business owners, and the usual kind of look, if you're struggling, we can help.
Mm-hmm.
Between the two of us, we have so much experience and knowledge and business side and personal side. We can do all sorts. So that ran a while, and then eventually we went our different ways because we realized we had different visions and different things, and that was fine. But I went through the process then of trying to work out, right, what is it? Who am I? What is it I actually
you did your work on yourself. What do you really want?
And really dig that deep, and it's through that internal work that I had to that I realized that when people were coming to me, and they weren't coming to me because they wanted a 6-figure business or anything like that, it was because they loved what they did, but they weren't enjoying the business element, and by the time we got to the end of it, they were actually enjoying working again. And that's, once I'd done that realization within myself, that's where the nuggets of business enjoyment came from. I thought, well, that sounds good. That's what it started off, was just is a good phrase. And then as our business separated, then I thought, actually, I'm getting a lot of good reception with that, so I will call my business that, with no idea what that actually meant.
Business enjoyment, you mean? Yeah. Like, what is that? Okay.
And just as sorry, we didn't really cover this. I know it's part of your question. It'll be one of your questions, so I'll dive in first. Prior to that, in the build up to that, so that would be 2017. So it's about 7 years I've been working as a coach. I'd also been working on me as well, because as you know, when you step out of, certainly when you stepped out of the corporate shield and start setting up your own business, you suddenly discover all these things you never knew existed. That your fears, your beliefs, the things that hold you back, and suddenly you can't hide from anything anymore, and you end up becoming a quivering wreck if you're not there. So
I just want to stop you before you, because that's such an important point.
And
that's where working for yourself, whether it's your own company or a coach, consultant, service provider, it's you who's taking the responsibility. And and particularly coaches, they're the most direct, because when you sell your services, you're selling yourself. And when you work for somebody, even you're selling their product or their service, you can kind of say, it's actually, they didn't do a good job. It's not me. I'm just a sales guy. Even if you're a director level, there's the boss. Well, the company policy is, I can only do there's just a little bit of a valve there. And it is discovering that being a coach, being all you can be, following your purpose and passion, requires you to know yourself, and sort of, I liken it to removing all the filters. It's rather like, we're like a garden, like you're this beautiful flower, but you're in a garden of weeds, and life puts weeds on top of you, and the grass grows and the brambles grow over, and you're this beautiful flower, but no one can see it, and you can't get through to the sunlight because of all these weeds. And so, and it's kind of fine. You can exist as a flower and it's totally cool, but no one's going to see your beauty. It's only if you clear the weeds, cut the lawn, take the brambles away, then suddenly now you can be the beautiful flower you're intending to be. So yes, exactly. I love what you do. So it is the self-discovery. So now what happened then?
Yeah,
what did you discover? I'm going to ask you another question. Sorry, I
no, that's fine. I'll give you an example. So I mean, had issues, everything you just alluded to, sort of, trying to ask for money and trying to sell me, and all those sort of things were an issue. But one of the big problems, or the way it manifested itself, or to illustrate it, is I couldn't phone anyone.
Wow.
And when I broke that down a little bit, it wasn't just that I could only phone somebody if they were expecting my call at a specific time. So even if it was a friend or somebody I knew well, I couldn't just pick the phone up and ring them.
Wow.
And doing the work and interning work, it was actually a fear of interrupting people. So it's a subsection of the fear of rejection. It's this fear of interrupting. So in my head, if I've not agreed a time with you, I can't call you because the phone will go and you'll get angry, and because
and you don't like to deal with angry people. Okay, so I'm just curious. That's so brilliant. So as you say, because I have the same thing with writing to people on Messenger. I don't like to do the organic marketing because I feel like I'm being pushy. Like, I'm like, you're supposed to go like, oh, thanks for commenting on my part. Have you ever tried XYZ? And I'm like, but they didn't ask me to write to them. So unless they've actually said, Lisa, please help me, I feel like being obnoxious. Well, yeah. And I'm sure we're not the only ones, but we're being honest about it. There are lots of people out there going like, but there's something, So how did you discover that? Which modality did you work with? A life coach, or did you do an emotional mind coach?
Tried lots of different things, and it's quite easy to trace it back to some of the key things, primarily in terms of I could remember times when I was trying to get attention from my dad, and I was very young, and he was in a bad mood, and he turned and shouted at me, and other situations where I was
exactly
all these little things sort of stuff, and a number of little things like this where it's a case of you've been told to shut up and keep quiet, and you then interrupt. So I could see the situations, but how do you resolve it? I tried hypnotherapy. I tried some working with a therapist on sort of inner child work on that kind of thing, which shifted some things, but not enough. I tried various sorts of hypnotherapy, lots of different things.
Which one works?
The biggest shift for that came from, it's not a traditional methodology, but it's a combination of, in the loosest sense of the terms, it's a combination of kinesiology and tapping.
Wow, that was your breakthrough.
It's not EFT. It's just using one meridian point, but you use the body to work out where the energy is stored, and your language to come up with what the phrase is that your body is reacting to, and then use the meridian points to release the energy around the language that you have, the belief that you've created for yourself. And so that was the thing that had the biggest shift, and
that shifted it. So now I'm just curious. So then, do you, in your working, do you now do that for other people, or did you actually take on that?
I've trained in that as well.
You've trained in that. So having realized that works.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was probably as part of. I met the guy that did it, and it's one of those things when you meet somebody, it's like, I need to know that anyway.
Yes. So you learned that.
No, it was always something I wanted to do and someone I wanted to work with. So, and I mean, it's one of those things that I'm not as good as him. I'm not going to, but have had some pretty good shifts with clients and things. And what I used to be able to do it remotely, like with using the energy distant connection and that kind of thing. And I'll be honest, I've not kept it up to scratch on that front. But using the actual moving of the arm and the kinesiology, we can get a lot more.
Because but the thing is, what's so lovely in this business is we're all unique, and your mentor in that area, that was his super strength, that was his superpower, and he does that. But he isn't you. He didn't have all the insolvency and all the business and all the so what you've created in your business enjoyment business is you're bringing your knowledge of the breakthroughs, but with all the other experience. And that's Russell Brunson says that the best way to have the most successful business is to combine two things that you're brilliant at, because so many people are good at one thing, but if you got this other thing and you can bring these two, that makes you super unique. So Excellent. It was explained. So anyway, so you had this breakthrough and you basically healed yourself at a cellular subconscious level, which is where the damage was from the trauma. You healed the trauma wounds. People call them different things, but let's call them trauma wounds. And you then set about creating a business. So combining, so how exactly do you work today?
Yeah, so then it was like, understand what does business enjoyment mean, and I'm also working with, do you know Rich Litvin? Is he one you've come across? If you ever read The Prosperous Coach, that's a very thoroughly recommend that book to anyone in the coaching space.
The Prosperous Coach.
But he's English, but he's based in America, and he's quite a high-end coach. But I was working with him in one of his salons and stuff, and thinking about a lot of this stuff. So. And various other things come around. Anyway, I developed the business enjoyment model, which is essentially based out of Maslow, but just given a little bit of extra spin. But it's a case of, you've got, as I alluded to before, you've got to put yourself in the right space first. So you've got to feel. If you see my TED talk, by the way, I run through this at a very high level. But
TED talk too. Oh, do give me the link to that. We'll put that in the show notes.
I will do. There's a story around that as well. But hey, we've only got so many time, But so first off, you've got to feel safe, and that means financially, but it also means in terms of health and in terms of mental health, physical health, all the rest of it. And also note that there's a difference between being safe and feeling safe. So some of the people who've got more money than anybody else still do not feel safe.
That's such a key point.
Background.
Yeah.
Then I'm changing the title of this one because of various things, but it has been Find Your Tribe. It's going to shift to Create Your Community, but I'm working with a lot more people in America now, and Find Your Tribe is not a phrase which goes down very well in America. Because of Native American things, and anyway, so it's not an issue in the UK, but conscious of it. So Create Your Community is what it's going to be about. So obviously there is the specific businessy side of things. There is finding your ideal client and the teams, the ideal team members, and getting all that side of stuff. But also, again, on a personal level, you've got to be able to drop the shields, become vulnerable, authentic, avoid rejection, all these sort of things that enable you to be able to attract the right kind of people. So in every one of these steps is a business and a personal side. Level 3 is inner confidence, which is sort of the esteem element of Maslow. So we want to be able to have people say good things about us, and repeat business and referrals and all that sort of, again, the business side of things. But inside as the imposter syndrome, perfectionism, all these kind of things. So for me, true inner confidence is when you can basically take feedback and make use of that feedback without taking it personally. So you can absorb it. That's the idea. Then we have Find Your Purpose, which I sort of touched on earlier on, which is a key thing, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then I've got two other ones, which are, one is money hangups, which is going to be connected to one of the others, but everyone's got hangups around money.
Yeah.
And a general overarching catch-all, anything I've missed, called Enjoy Your Business.
Yeah.
So these are the sort of the four main things, and these two sort of bolt-ons, which sort of just to tick the boxes. So I sort of developed that sort of concept, and I've got a book on that as well, which explains it a bit more.
Give us a reference to that one.
Yeah, I'll give it a and so one of the things I do is I run kind of peer-to-peer mastermindy groupy type things. It's not the standard one. Again, I don't like doing the same thing that everyone else does. I like doing things a little bit different. They're called breathing spaces. We're all online now. It used to be physical. We're all online. Maximum of 8 people in a group, meet monthly, and each month we pick up one of those themes. It rolls on to the next one. So what are we now? We're in March. So March, it's Find Your Tribe, Create Your Community. That's what we're in at the moment. Last month it was Feeling Safe. Next month it will be Inner Confidence. So all the groups are on the same one. Within that context, I come up with a thought, question, idea, or whatever it might be, a perspective, and then we lob it into the group, and we get a conversation around that thing. And it could be business, it could be personal, but it's within that context, so we can spiral off to all sorts of directions. People bring in wherever they are, whatever they need, and they always know how these things go. They always end up being the thing exactly that you need, even if you didn't know that's what you want. Yeah. So I've got a community on that basis, and they meet every month. And yeah, my idea is that we can cover everything in terms of business and personal development over time, and ultimately it's getting that mindset of enjoy your business, not driving for the money.
Incredible. Yeah. And that's, I mean, it's such a niche. But it's one that I just don't think people would have given a hoot about 10 years ago in the same way they do now. I think the times have changed so much.
Yes, absolutely. It shifted dramatically, and I think that's why the thing with the insolvency book came back around again. And I've even done some presentations with some of the funders and bankers and things. My old boss rang me up, and we've done some stuff in that, because 10 years after I'd done it, it's like, okay, people get it now.
And do they ever have you come, and with all the people they're laying off, do they ever pay you to like work with people they're laying off because they're like closing the business or whatever?
No, primarily because, to put it bluntly, there's no, and this isn't say anything against them, it's just a fact of life. There's no incentive for anybody to look after them. That's one thing. So there's no incentive for them to do or go over and above, but also they do normally get in support from the local sort of job centres and things. They normally have people there to look after them, but maybe not as therapeutically, but at least get them signed on what to do next, and very simple and practical. But yeah. So obviously I work with one-to-one. I do a few. I'm running challenges at the moment as well. That's another thing that's coming up at the moment. So I've got a Your Purpose challenge, which I ran a couple last year. I did one at the beginning of the year called Be Stress Free, or Stress Free for 2023, I think I called it. But I'm just converting that to a low-cost online course, just to sort of get the basic mindsets in place so that you can, move on. But what I want to create is a community in the metaverse.
Wow, this is very on key. This is the future.
Well, yeah, and I came up with this idea before I knew what the phrase metaverse was. Basically, I had a vision of a computer game kind of thing, or those sort of graphics, and now I realise that that's what people talk about in the metaverse. So it's online, but if you can imagine Disneyland or Center Parks or something like that, and you come through the front door, and then there's like the notice board with all the maps on and everything, and that's where you register and log in. And then over here's the bookshop, and there's a video store, and there's a theatre, and here's all the books you need, and there's all the videos, and there's all the presentations you need. Over here's a first aid centre where if you need help you can go there. Here's a cafe where you can network and meet with people, and you've got roads coming off it, blah blah blah. There's going to be a land for each one of the different. There's going to be Find Your Tribe world. There'll be Feeling Safe world. So all the things, and focus on the different areas. We can go up a level to find your purpose into the level up there, that sort of thing. That what it will actually look like, I don't know, but I've got a vision.
Are you looking for funding for that? Are you looking for venture capital for
that? Not yet, but I'm in one of the groups, so the groups that we're connected with in the Metaverse one. So I'm going to start putting some few. I think it'd be quite quick to get a concept, because behind it all, it won't be me creating the stuff. I'll just be curating, kind of thing. It'd be ability type sort of stuff. But I want to make sure that people get everything that they need in order to be successful, but enjoy the journey at the same time. So then it'll need maps and all that kind of thing. And then, obviously you can have different levels, so you can come in for free and go up to the window and press your nose flat against it and get the flyer and that kind of thing. Or you can get a startup level, say, and just get access to certain parts of the park until you've done certain things and open up the rest of the park and that kind of. And then as people are membership, they have to plug in certain information to be a member, which we will track. And I don't know if you've ever been into they haven't been sort of accountants' office, I know that, and possibly lawyers, but there's television screens up in the ceiling, which kind of show the FTSE index of what's going on. I want to create my own version of the FTSE index, where the companies are ranked based on a new style of enjoyment, ultimately. And so it's not just about money. It's not just about how much set. So we've got. I don't know what that is yet, by the way.
I love it. No, but you just got this vision, and now you're waiting for how it actually evolves.
Yeah, that's all right. I can work on
well,
that.
It's like Google, though. I mean, a little bit. I used to live in Silicon Valley, and there they didn't recruit. They were all paying decent money back in early 90s, before the big crash, the dot-com crash. And it was all about how much fun it was. That was how they recruited. If you're an engineer, which one do you want to go with? Who has the best cookies at lunchtime? Had the best pool room or billiards room or whatever. It was how they used to do things. And then everything crashed, and then that was forgotten. It's interesting. Then it was all back to money. And well, I'm sure, Silicon Valley still has a little bit of that, but because it had to attract the top talent, because it was all about the talent. But then, 2008, everything changed. Now we've gone back to when it's survival, markets crashing, financial reset, whatever. But ironically, this time it's gone the other way. This time people have had enough. I think what happened this time is so different. People realize that if you don't have your own sovereignty, if you're not in charge of your life can get really bad really quickly. And everyone was touched by lockdown, the whole world over. It never, if you think in the history of mankind, has anything been like that.
And I think it's one of those sobering things that helps you realize that there's more to life. And this is one of the, when I sort of got to that sort of, oh yes, purpose and all this sort of thing, that's what's important. That's where the real enjoyment comes from. When I looked back at that first book I'd written, it had actually been in there all along. I'd not recognized it, that was all. But all these people had lost everything and then got back up on their feet and built a new business again, because they'd faced the worst that they could face. It drove home what was really important to them, and then they built a business based on what was important to them, not what they thought was important to them. And I think that's what people are been going through the last 3 years or whatever, because so much has happened that makes you appreciate what you do have and tells you what you want to hang on to, and when you can start thinking about as to why that is and the rest of it. So yeah, definite shift. People starting to build businesses based on the right premises rather than the wrong ones.
Yeah, I just wanted to say what you said there, basing a business on what you really want rather than what you thought you want. And that is key. That is so key. Yeah. And it is something that we're not taught at school. We're taught to just get in this system and do it. And I mean, I think my son's 22, he's at Bristol Uni, and he wanted to act, and he didn't get into acting school after several attempts. So luckily he got into the next best thing, which was film at Bristol. Okay. Because as I said to him, you can hire yourself as an actor. Like, it's the way to kind of set yourself up, which he does. So he acts in his own productions. And he, because he's my son and I am who I am, and I believe we should all live our dreams. But, I do think there's a difference. They aren't willing to sell their souls the way our generation were. They're not like, well, that's what you've got to do. You just got to do that. You've got to make money. You've got to be a professional, whatever. And this is the growing narrative. There was a movie recently, What's Love Got to Do With It, I think it's called, about arranged marriages amongst the Asian community. And it was, it's like it always been done that way, always been done that way, always been done that way. And at the end of the movie, I'll give it away. Sorry if you I'm now ruining it for everyone. It doesn't work. It doesn't work out. And which is a cliche, but not really. But it was more that the previous generations had always just accepted, and it didn't work, but they fought through. It's like, we'll make it work. And that's like a pro and a con. You can sometimes, the young people are called snowflakes because they're like, oh, I didn't feel like that today, so I'm not going to do it. So you can take it too far. But actually, we are not prepared. The younger people are not prepared to live the way we do. They're not prepared to never see their partners, their lives, their whatever they love. And I think we are moving that way as a generation as well.
And I think
my son wants life.
What you said there is absolutely spot on. It's getting the balance right. So when you alluded to the Silicon Valley is one that were too much on the play side. Obviously, there's loads of ones that made loads of money, but I also know there are loads that just got money from the bank. So they thought, oh, we're a .com, here, have some cash, and just wasted it on games and biscuits and that kind of thing or whatever. Yes. So you have to get the balance right, and part of business is an art form, knowing what tool to use at the right time, because it's not a science where this works, that works. You've got to sort of
art form. See, I don't think people think about it like that. You just said it's an art form. I don't think that's radically how people think about it. They would say it was a science. They would say the science of business, and you're saying it's an art form. And you're saying, and that's interesting for you with your experience of when it doesn't work. Because you'd think even more that you go, it didn't work because they didn't put the things in the right place.
This is because at the moment and for the next foreseeable future until the robots take over.
That's another conversation.
I'm joking. This goes back to what we saw. A business is simple. And if the robots were running the business, it would be fine. But the business is full of people at the top and in the middle, and people are complicated. So that's when doing business as a person becomes an art form, rather than the systematic element that seems to be solved with.
Yeah. And being good at the art of communication, because people are about communication at the end of the day. And being a coach, consultant, mentor, whatever, is about being able to get through to people to help them. And so that's about the art of communication. If you're selling something, you've got to get people to see that your product or service will enable them. Again, it's communication. Relationships, communication. Maybe being communication is like the number one skill in the world.
And just a different way of looking at communication, or a key part of it is that we're all speaking different languages. And it's actually a translation process as part of the communication. So when somebody, like we were talking about, that this is what they need, this is what they want kind of thing, the old cliche of someone going to France and speaking English, they don't understand me, so I'll shout English even louder, why don't you hear me? That's what happens with the marketing messages when they're not aligned, and when you're saying the wrong thing to the wrong person. It's that communication is actually a translation process of how does that person receive information, and how do I change my communication so that they understand it, and vice versa. And that's where the
and the audience, and the other side of that is you're saying the right things to the wrong people, and sometimes they're not going to be interested in what you have to offer. You have to understand that it's not what you're saying, it's that those people are interested in what you're saying, and then you have to find the right audience. And that's the other side, is the right thing to the right audience, but you've got to get the right audience.
Yes.
And it's so fascinating, but it's not complicated. It's just there are certain principles that have to be applied and reapplied and reapplied, and you have to learn them.
It's
and
simple.
It seems obvious.
It's simple, but not necessarily easy.
Exactly.
It
seems obvious. I'm so sorry, I talked over you.
That's all right. I'll give you another link as well. You're gonna get so many links.
You're gonna have all your info.
But I also have a business cheat sheet. We're talking about business being simple but not easy. So everything you need to know about business on one side of A4, because Brilliant. Business is actually quite straightforward, and it's us that mess things up.
I know, because we're complex creatures, as you say. Wow, we have been talking for ages and ages. I hope you're okay with that. Yeah, it has been absolutely mind-blowing, and I'm so thrilled to meet you. I'm absolutely fascinated to read your first book, your second book, and please give me everything that all the listeners, I will say the readers, but not being read, but being listened to.
I've got 6 books in total, 7 or 8. I lose track now. But
give us your links to whatever. I'm sure some people will be interested to follow up with you. I have a list. I'm actually creating a directory of the best coaches in the world, so we'll have to put you on that. So anyone I like and who I think is genuine, who I think has something awesome to offer, but they have to go through me. I'm the filter. Doesn't matter how good they are, I have to approve them. My secret list. I'll have to add you onto that. And that's part of what the Dream Team Academy is going to be doing. It's really it's me and my team, but it's going beyond my team, because the idea is people will ultimately come to me. My vision is people come to me and like, okay, so you want to do this way, you go to the Dream Team Academy, because whatever it is you want to do, they're going to have the right people there, and we're going to send you, like, you need this person and that person and this person and that person, because everyone's different, and some people can hear the same thing from somebody else differently. So we have to match people, and we have to personalize. We're all about personalization, because we've got into the habit, haven't we, now, of like, oh, that's just go take that course, and just taking that course. It's the interaction, it's the communication, it's the personalization that really works. Into horses for courses, as we say in my business. So
it's a horse trainer.
As a horse trainer, exactly. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. We have to learn a lot. Horses. There's a book that I've never written and I outlined it, and I have it somewhere, and maybe one day I'll do it, which is all about everything you ever need to know about business you can learn from a horse, because you really can. Actually, all the principles of life are the principles of business and the principles of horse training, and they're all the same. And on that note, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us today. What we'd love to do is in a year or so, we'll revisit you, Andrew, and see how you're doing with your business. And because that's what I want to. I kind of want to track people and see how they're doing and how they're growing, and find out where the next year has taken you in next year. So until then, I do appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing how you grow and how many people get to enjoy their business through learning from you. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Dream Team Academy podcast. Tune in for our next podcast soon, where you too can find out how you can make your business dreams come true.